Okay then gang, so when Tailwind processes our source CSS file, it uses a default configuration to do that under the hood. Now this configuration dictates the values of properties controlled by different classes that we use in our HTML. For example, it would say that the text-sm class would give a font size of 0.875 rems, or text XL would be a font size of 1.25 rems. It would also say things like the color red-500 should be a specific hex code, etc. So we can also create our own Tailwind config file to either extend those rules or to add extra classes for colors or fonts or spacing or anything else, or to change the current ones as well. So let's try creating a Tailwind config file to do this. So then to do this, I'm going to head back over here and open up a terminal. Now I need to open up a new terminal because this one is currently running the live server. So let me click on this plus icon to do that. Now to create a Tailwind config file, we need to say npx tailwind css init. Now I'm going to pass through an extra flag as well. So _ full, and what this extra flag does is create us a config file with all of the default values that Tailwind uses under the hood included in it. Now I'm doing that so we can see them all to begin with. So let me press enter to do this, and we'll notice now this tailwind.config.js file right here. Now when we use a Tailwind config, it must be named in this exact way, otherwise Tailwind won't use it. So if we click on that, we can see this giant object which is being exported, and inside it, it contains all of the different values for our classes. So inside this theme object, if we scroll down, we see a colors property, and you can see the different colors that we have. So we have grey here, and if we use a class inside our HTML which says text-gray-300 for example, then Tailwind will know to apply this hex code. Alright, so right here we're setting all of the different values for the different color strengths. The same for red, orange, yellow, green, all the different colors in Tailwind. We also have these values for spacing, so we can see 2 is 0.5 rem, 6 is 1.5 rem, etc. So when we say, for example, p-2, it knows to apply a padding of 0.5 rems, right? Now, if we scroll down a bit more, we should come to the fonts down here, the font families, the font size, we've seen these. So when we say text-sm, it knows to use this font size, text-xl, this font size, etc. So if we wanted to, we could change these values right here, and then if we were to use that class, it would change how it looks dependent on the value that we pass through here. Because when we then use Tailwind to process our CSS, it will look for the values and match them up, okay? So if we wanted to, we could also add new properties. So say I want a mammoth font size, for example. I could say, okay, let's have mammoth equal to something like 8 rems, all right? So if I save this now, the first thing I need to do is reprocess our source styles.css, because previously when we processed it, it was doing that according to the default styles which didn't have this in. Now, if I want to use this in my index.html file, I need to reprocess the styles based on this new config. Now, I don't need to do anything special. Tailwind is automatically going to look for this config file when it processes it. Now, it doesn't matter that there wasn't one there before. We never used to have this config file. When we don't have one, it just uses all of these default styles under the hood without this file even being there. But now we have one, it's going to look for it, and it's going to apply all of these different values, including our new one. So let me now process this by saying npm run build-css. Remember, that was inside our package.json file right here. So this is how Tailwind runs through our CSS and processes it into the new one. So let's do that. And once we've done that, we should be able to go to our index file, and now we should be able to use that new text size. So I could say, for example, text-mammoth now, mammoth, and it will be huge. So save that, and let's come over here, and now we can see this huge text. So that's how we extend these different values inside the config file. Now then, you could change all of the values in here. and you could add new values in here, and that is going to alter how our designs look, right? But I wouldn't recommend changing values inside the default config setup. If you do this, it's hard to see what values you've actually changed and what new values you've added, and therefore it's going to be tough to distinguish between the default values already there and your own. So instead, we should create a blank config file to extend the default rules, and that way we're not altering the core values, and it's easier to see which extra values we've added ourselves as well. So what I'm going to do is actually rename this over here to tailwind-default. You can call it what you want, it doesn't matter, just rename it to something else. And now we lose that tailwind icon because now this is not named correctly. So if we built our styles now and processed them using Tailwind again, then it wouldn't use this file. It would use the default ones under the hood, which is the same as this file, but not with this in it, right? So now let's create a new blank config file. And to do that, we say npx tailwindcss init without the full flag. And now it's going to create this blank config file for us right here. So now we don't have all of those values in it. So we know that now if we try to process this CSS, it's going to look for a config file. Does that mean that we're not going to get any of the properties at all and nothing will work because there's nothing in here? Well, no. It still looks at all of the default values under the hood, even though they're not in here, and it applies those. But now we can extend those inside this thing right here. So we can add new ones. All right. So let's try doing that. So say, for example, we wanted to add a new color to the palette that we use. So let's see how the default config uses colors. Well, it has a colors property, and inside we have different properties. For example, black is this and white is this. So we could just add a new color by coming over here and saying colors, because we copy the structure of this thing right here. And then inside the name of our color, well, I'm going to call it primary, and then whatever the value is. Now, I'm just going to give this a value, which is a hex code of FF6363. Now, this is not a hex code I've just plucked out of thin air. This is the one I'm using in this design, and it's a bit like a red color, but they didn't have this shade of red in the default rules over here. So I've created my own color right here called primary to get that color. Now, say I also wanted to add a secondary color, but I wanted to add two different shades of the secondary color. Well, if we take a look, we can say whatever the color is called, and then inside that object, declare different shades. So I'm going to put a comma after this primary, and I'm just going to paste this in, secondary, which is an object, and then we have a strength of 100 and 200. And these are two different shades of the same color. So this is a lighter one, this is a darker one, okay? So what if we want to use these colors now for backgrounds or text inside our index.html file? Well, first of all, we can save this. Then we need to rebuild the CSS. So to do that, we can come down here and say npm run build CSS. So every time we change the config or the styles file, we need to do this, remember? Press enter to rebuild that. And once we've rebuilt it, we can go over here and we can use those styles. So I'm going to scroll down to where we have the two buttons for logging in and signing up. And I'm going to say I want the text to be the primary color. So I can now say class is equal, oops, not in capitals, class is equal to text hyphen primary. So that's that red color. And I'm going to do the same for the sign up. So copy that and paste it right there, save it. And now we can see it's this kind of reddy pink color. Awesome. So what if I want to use the other color for text down here? Let's say, for example, on this one. Now I want to use a background color of this one right here, strength 100, and a text color of this one. So I'm going to come to this div and I'm going to give this a class equal to something, and this is going to say bg hyphen secondary hyphen 100. So this is how we apply background color. We say bg, then the color, then the strength. So it's going to be this one right here. Now for the text color, I want it to be the other. So text hyphen secondary hyphen 200. Save that, and if we come to the bottom, we should see that down here. Awesome. So my friends, that's how we can use this config file to extend the theme that Tailwind uses to add different classes with different values. Now, there's one more thing I want to show you, and that is actually a package I've got installed for Tailwind. It's called tailwindcss IntelliSense. Now, it's actually not installed, so I'm just going to do that right here by clicking install, and then you might have to restart VS Code. So I'm just going to close it, and then I'm going to open it up again for this to take effect. And now, when we come into the place where we add different classes, if we start to add a new class, then we can see everything that Tailwind provides us with, all the different classes available to us. So if I say, for example, text hyphen, we can see all of these different things right here. So it's just a nice bit of IntelliSense. Now, in order to use this, we have to have our config file defined. So if this wasn't here, if we didn't have a config file, then it wouldn't show all of these different drop-down options. That's my experience with it anyway. So now we know how to customize Tailwind classes. Let's dive a bit deeper by adding our own custom fonts as well.